Welcome to the Equestrian Experience, a show where we talk about what happens behind the rosettes and what we've tried so that you don't have to. We're your hosts, Amanda Ross and Bex Mason. And today we're talking to FEI Dressage rider and Paralympian, Amelia White. Welcome, Amelia. It is so great to have you on the podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Right. Hey, Bex, how are you? What's happening?
I'm so well, thank you. I'm so well. We've got spring on its way here in England, and I had a little chat to Amelia before we came live on air, and it looks like the sun is shining with you as well there, Amelia, today.
It is, for the first time in, months. I think I haven't seen the sun since last September, so it's a bit new for me.
Oh my God.
Hallelujah. So should we start off, Amelia, by just letting our listeners know a little bit about you? I'm really excited to get into this podcast today. So for those who don't know, let's start at the beginning. Where did you grow up and where did your passion for the horses begin?
Yeah, sure. So where did passion for horses begin? I think that it's always the question of every rider. You know, you think back, where did it start? And honestly, I can't remember. It's one of those really funny things. So I was born in Australia and grew up when I was younger in Sydney, and then the horse bug really started. And I remember from the age of about 5 or 6 begging my parents for a pony, and my parents are 100% not horsey people. They are now, but back then they were not. So my mom, she worked as a model, she worked as a dancer and a cheerleader. That was her thing. And they tried super, super hard to get me into dancing, to get me into modeling, and I would not have any of it. And I really, really wanted a pony, and they just had no idea. So they said to me, well, you know, if you want to have a pony, then you need to know as much as you can about having a horse. So I remember spending, you know, pre-Google days, pre-internet days, I was in the public libraries, I was in our school library researching everything I could about horses. And, you know, eventually I said to them, well, you know, I've kept my side of the bargain. Now I want to have riding lessons. And it started when I was about 8, and fortnightly lessons progressed very quickly into weekly lessons. And within the first year of starting, I was looking for my first pony. And
oh wow!
So that's sort of how it began. And my grandfather at the time said my parents were crazy. You know, it was a phase. I would grow out of it. Every little girl, and here we are 23 years later. I'm so I think he didn't get that one right. And then when I sort of hit my teenagers, the riding became super big. So we moved out of Sydney to the Central West, so about 4.5 hours west of Sydney, and moved to what for Australian standards is a rather small piece of land, so around 140 acres, but from a European perspective, it's quite big.
That's quite big.
Yeah, that's where I had my horses, and I got into eventing at that stage. So the peak of my eventing time, I had 7 horses in full-time training, and
that's a big team.
Yeah, it was a big team. I realize that now. At the time, I thought it was, you know, what normal people did. But
well, we all think that's normal. It's just the rest of the world that thinks we're crazy.
Yeah. But that's amazing coming from completely non-horsey parents. So you managed to persuade them that much to then eventually they've gone out and followed your passion. They've bought a farm, and then you can continue with your dream.
Yeah, exactly. And for their sort of full-time jobs, I mean, my mom is a police officer. My dad works as a corrective services officer. So totally not farm orientated, not horse related at all. And the added complication of them working shift work meant that we all had to really work together to manage the horses, but also to get to competitions. I mean, you can't take 4 or 5 horses to an eventing competition on your own. It just doesn't.
No. God, you can't take more than 1 on your own.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's so interesting. So beginning in Australia and having an eventing background, when did you move to Germany and how did that all come about?
So in 2010, I had graduated from high school the year before and decided to go to university close to my home. And the idea was I could study something, stay at home, save some money, ride, and compete without the added stress of having to be at school every day. University gave you a bit more flexibility. And during the fast.
What were you studying at uni? Sorry, what were you studying?
Decided to study criminal justice. That was not the first plan. So there's a very long story as to how that came about, but sort of fell into it in a way. And on my way home from university, then I was involved in a very bad car accident, unfortunately. And a Canadian man was driving on the wrong side of the road, and we were coming into a blind corner, and he didn't see me, I didn't see him, and he had bent down to pick up a cigarette, and as he bent down, he looked up and sort of automatically steered to what he thought was the correct side of the road, which unfortunately was not. And less than a second later, we had a head-on accident right on the apex of a quite severe blind corner. And
jeez,
he was doing 100, I was doing 85, so quite a high speed accident. And I ended up in a wheelchair for 2.5 years, and he very fortunately for him walked away from the accident with nothing more than a stubbed toe. But that sort of put an end to my eventing career at that point. So I didn't think about it then. I didn't take that into account. For me, I was very like, I will go back to eventing. This is what I want to do. And I tried for quite a few years to go back to that. And at the time, I was training with Megan Jones, so an Australian Olympic eventer. And I tried for years to get back into it, and it wasn't working. And it took me a long time to see it. And it was Megan who first suggested that maybe I should consider para dressage, and I was highly offended at that point, because I felt like people were doubting that I would be able to get back to where I was. And long story, a lot of backing and forthing in between, and we decided that I would give it a try and see how I felt about it. And I'm not one to do anything 50%, so decided that if I wanted to pursue dressage and para dressage, I should come to Europe and see what the world was like over here, see what professional dressage was like. And I came for a sightseeing trip in 2015 that I told my parents was just going to be me having a look. That 2 weeks later involved a phone call to my dad at 2:00 in the morning saying, "Dad, I've just bought a horse."
You don't muck around.
No. And then trying to coordinate vet checking and going through the process of buying a horse in Germany, because it is totally not straightforward compared to how it is in Australia. Then working out, where do we put the horse, where does it go into training, how am I going to manage this? And it ended up with me moving to Germany officially at the end of 2015 for a 6-month program, I suppose, to get into it and to learn how to make that transition from eventing dressage to dressage. And 8 years later, I'm still here.
Oh my God. How did you figure out who to go to when you went to Germany? Like, particularly coming from Australia, how did you find the connections, and what advice would you give for others wanting to do the same thing?
I think that's a very tough thing. I was very fortunate to be put in contact with an Australian dressage rider that was here at the time, and she helped me a lot. Yeah. And I spent the past 1.5 years in her stable, and that was, I think that's a very important step. I think if you're coming to Germany, there's so many aspects that make it rather challenging. So language is a huge thing. You think in Europe, people speak a lot of English. It's true, they do speak English, but in Germany, they don't want to. That's of course. That's probably one. And when you come to the sort of horsey areas, they're very country areas, meaning they're not very exposed to English speakers. So the lack of English in regional areas is quite prevalent. So for example, where I live, there's no English. Like, if you want to go to the supermarket, you're going to have to speak German, otherwise they will not help you. So
when you moved over, did you speak any German when you initially moved over?
I did, yes. I was very lucky. My mom is actually German, so I grew up in a very German influenced family in Australia. So
Right.
Yeah, I did
That's
have a bit of German when I moved over here, but there's German for basic day-to-day conversation, and then there's horse German, and that's something you have to learn on top of that. So, if you think about saddle in German, it's very similar to saddle in English, but when you have training in German, that's something totally different. And that was something I had to learn. So first piece of advice I would say to anyone wanting to come over here is try to base yourself with someone who's been here for a while and that you can communicate with really clearly. So whether that's an Australian rider that's been here for a while, or an English rider that's been here for a while, do that and sort of use their connections to get to know people, because to come here without knowing anyone and trying to work out, that's super hard. And if you can do it, I would come for sort of like 2 to 3 months and try it out. I would really not recommend packing up everything and moving here completely blind, because it's a lot harder than you think. And you're going to go through a stage where you absolutely hate it. You don't want to be in a position where you're totally stuck here and it's not working.
Well, I was going to say, I'm just interested to hear about the training side of things. Like when you're stood in the middle of the arena and you're getting, and not orders shouted at you, but you're getting instruction. Is it very different? Because I can imagine, here in England, people are very positive with their training, and everything you do very good, and it's all very, that's how we do it. But I just know I've had some lessons before, some training before from German instructors, and it can come across quite harsh, some of it. I'm like, oh, they don't say anything, and then I think I'm doing everything wrong. Did you find that?
Yeah, I did. So actually in middle of 2017, I moved to a German barn. So I now train with Helen Lange-Hanneberg, and I've been there for, coming up
Helen who?
6 years now. Lange-Hanneberg. It's a very long, complicated German name.
Is she little Helen?
Yeah.
Really petite, blonde, amazing rider?
Yeah, that's Helen, yeah.
Oh my God. I've heard of her. That's a big thing. She must be amazing.
She makes me feel like an elephant standing next to a mouse. I mean, she's this tiny, little, petite human being. And I mean, my horse is really big. And so to see her sitting on him, I mean, I'm also not that tall. So when I sit on him, I look not completely out of place, but you can tell that he's a big horse. When she sits on him, it looks rather funny. And yet she can get him to do things, and I sit back and I'm like, it's me. I'm the problem. It's me. It's not.
Like the Taylor Swift song.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And so I moved to the barn with Helen, and Helen is very very supportive, but she's also incredibly hard. She's a very strict trainer, and you're not there to be told how good you are every day. She's there to help you improve, and she pushes you a lot. And it is a very German thing that if they're not saying anything, it means you're not doing anything wrong. And that's what took me a while to understand. It's a very backwards way of training compared to what I've experienced with English trainers and also with Australian-based trainers. And that can be a bit confronting in the beginning, and it does knock your confidence a little bit. You also have to understand, I mean, the perfect example is yesterday. We have a competition this coming weekend, and the week before a competition, the training steps up, 10 to 20% when you're going into a competition, because you're not going to a competition just to have a good time. You're going there to demonstrate your training and see where you are and what you can improve on. So you want to show the best. We were training the canter pirouettes yesterday, and the feeling was super good, and he was really soft and around my leg, and I had the feeling that the pirouette was super good. Well, apparently it wasn't, because I lost count of how many pirouettes I ended up riding yesterday. And then in the end, we got where she was trying to get us to go, and the feeling was 100% better. And so it's about learning not to accept what they're giving you, but accepting what they're giving you and seeing how much better you can make it. Because, the pirouettes he was doing were for a 7. 7 for a canter pirouette's not a bad score. But in the end, it became an 8.5. And that's, that's where you want to go.
It's really good.
So
that's where the percentages are that you win.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the difference, and it's the small things. So she focuses a lot on the small things, like riding a center line. I've never ridden so many centerline halts as I have since I came to Germany, because it's such an important part of the test that people often gloss over. So I think training with someone like that, you have a completely different perspective on how you approach your training, how you approach a competition, and how you approach every day when you have a horse, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I'm starting to think here. So when you were a kid, you went off and researched everything possible about ponies, which obviously worked well enough that your parents ended up getting you a pony. And you seem to have this attitude of, really great work ethic and never sort of leaving any stone unturned. You're a lawyer as well. How do you mix all this together? Because that's a pretty demanding job. Can you just explain how you do corporate law work and top level dressage work, Amelia?
My day starts very early, and I think some people call me completely insane. I think that's a good way to describe it. So
I think we all are a bit.
I think that comes with the territory when you have horses, actually. So I'm a corporate lawyer. So I work in M&A, which is mergers and acquisitions. So what we do is we basically buy and sell companies, and that in itself involves a lot of work, a lot of preparation. And so essentially my day looks like Monday to Friday. I get up at 4:30, and it's horrible. And then I'm in the stable by
You're like, I'm not gonna lie, it's rubbish.
It's crap.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no point sugarcoating it. It's horrible. I love what I do, but every morning at 4:30, especially Thursday, Fridays, when you've been doing it for 3-4 days in a row, I lie there and I question my life choices, and I think, do I really want to do this? I mean, especially in winter. I mean, Bex, you would know, being in the UK.
Oh, it must be horrible.
It's cold. It's dark. It's snowing, it's raining. The hardest part of it all is actually making the transition from my nice, warm, comfortable bed outside to my car, scraping the ice, the snow, the general crap off my car, and then sitting there freezing, waiting for the seat warmer to kick in to dry.
No, Amelia, what you're doing there is you need to run out as soon as you wake up and turn your engine on, turn your car on. Sorry, this isn't very good for the environment. I probably shouldn't be saying that.
It's actually illegal in Germany, and your neighbors will complain. That's another point about
really?
Germany is having to deal with it.
I take that back. You don't want to be doing that at all. Do not break the law.
Oh, don't do that.
Oh my God. So, what time do you go to bed if you get up at 4:30?
That depends on my working day, actually. So, I'm in the barn by 5. I train at 6:30, and I have to leave the stable sort of latest by 7:30 for the day in the morning. I come back home, and then usually my first meeting starts anywhere between 8 and 8:30. And even though I'm 80% home office, so I work 3 days a week from home, and then 2 days a week at our office in Frankfurt, which is 5 hours from where I am. So I travel down on a Sunday night, working up until Tuesday, and then travel back on a Tuesday night. So I'm home on a Tuesday night somewhere between 11 and midnight, and then, get up at 4:30. So Wednesday mornings are probably the worst day in my week. And then the rest of the time I'm at home. So first meeting between 8 and 8:30, and then it largely depends on how my day goes. Sometimes I'm finished by 5:30, and I can go outside, take the dog for a walk, wind down a little bit, and then I'm in bed by, like the typical old lady I am, I'm in bed by like 9. But some nights
that's okay. I'm sort of in bed by 9, and I don't get up at 4:30.
And
so how did you bring your work to Germany? So obviously you came over to do it for the horses, or did you bring your work with you, or did you find a job here? How did that come about?
So I actually found the job in Germany. So power of social media. I was still studying my degrees when I came to Germany. So I ended up graduating from a Bachelor of Law, Bachelor of Criminology in 2018. And then I decided, because I'm a glutton for punishment, to do a master's in law. And so I studied the master's in law, and then came COVID, and then came Tokyo, and all of that in between. So I ended up doing all of my study online whilst I was here. And shortly before Tokyo, in the midst of the pandemic, I received my results for my master's thesis and posted them online, as you do. And someone who followed me asked me, what were my plans post-graduation, and I was in a very complaining mood at that point, and I basically let fly about how the German system is completely ridiculous, because being a common law trained lawyer was not transferable to Germany. And actually, I'd worked as a criminal lawyer in Australia, so completely different system. And she ended up saying, well, I work for this German company. They're looking for in-house lawyers. I can put your name forward. And me being rather pessimistic at that point, thought, whatever, nothing will happen. And they ended up chasing me down. And I went through a very grueling interview process, 5 interviews. And they ended up offering me the job a month before I ended up going to Tokyo. So it was very much an interview. I would love to have the job, but I'm on the short list to go to Tokyo on the Australian team. I don't know yet when I will go. And basically it didn't matter. And so I started on the 1st of July. On the 6th of July, I got told I was going to Tokyo. And so I ended up ringing my boss. I'm like, hi, I worked for you for 4 days, but guess what? I'm now leaving for 6 weeks. See you in September. And they were amazing. They were really supportive and super flexible, and allowed me to work while we were in quarantine in Aachen, which was
cool,
super great. And so that's sort of how it worked out. So I ended up getting thrown into a completely German company, working in M&A law, which is something I had no experience in at the time. And now I'm studying a 7th degree and doing a German, doing a master's in German law. So it's completely in German, and doing it via the Frankfurt School of Finance. So that's also online, and completely in German. So very beneficial in the long run, but sometimes I want to die.
But Amelia, talk about like an overachiever. When will you stop? Absolutely insane. And that just shows you typically how you can go through life, though. And you said you're very pessimistic at one point, and then you put your results up, and how things can just turn, and then getting selected to go to the Tokyo Olympics. I really want to talk about a little bit more about that. I mean, what was your process to qualify to compete at the Olympics?
So that's a very, interesting topic because of what happened with COVID. So normally, and Amanda, you would know, having gone through it yourself, it's a very I wouldn't say straightforward process, but generally you qualify in the 2 years preceding a games, and you have set competitions that you should attend, and minimum scores or requirements that you need to achieve. And due to COVID, that completely went out the window. So as far as competitions went, it became a case of whatever competition you can actually get to is going to count. And 2020 for us was just completely out of it. We didn't have any international competitions, and it's it's all a bit, it was all a bit mished up. And then beginning of 21, we had the very, very fortunate experience of being able to travel to Doha. And although that was not considered to be a qualifying competition at the time, it was good to A, get the horse out, and B, we had to fly him there. So he'd never flown before. And so it was a good practice run if we were going to be selected. And, it was actually very nice to, escape quarantine at that point. It was an effort to get there. And the competition was amazing. And we ended up winning in Doha. And that sort of really put us on the map for the selectors, off the back of having a year of not having been out. And, then it's very much, it comes in waves. Selection is not straightforward, and riding is not straightforward, especially at this level. And so you have massive highs and then massive lows. And we had a year of horrible times in 2020. And then we went to Doha, and the competition was great. And the day the horses arrived back from Qatar, we were informed by the FEI that there was a herpes outbreak and everything was being shut down. And so my horse ended up going into quarantine, meaning he was in a stable for 5 weeks. We couldn't take him out. I couldn't ride him. I couldn't even walk him. He was just in a box for 5 weeks. He performed beautifully in Qatar. We'd won. We were on a massive high, and then suddenly everything stopped for 5 weeks. I couldn't ride him. I couldn't compete him. I couldn't even get him out of the box.
That's so awful.
Oh my God.
And so that, that's a massive low that you have to somehow try and get through it, knowing that it was 21. Tokyo was taking place. Selection would end at the end of June. And here we are, beginning of March. We just lost 5 weeks. And we had 10 days after he came out of quarantine to prepare him for the next international at the beginning of April.
What?
And you have no choice. There was no other competitions. It was that one, or your chance of qualifying in Tokyo was gone, because we just didn't have the shows due to COVID and due to the herpes outbreak. And so anyway, you know, and then we went to the competition, and there's this added pressure of like, we just won in Qatar and now we have to perform at the next competition. And it didn't go to plan, and we didn't get the scores we needed. And, you know,
well, I'm not surprised, but
well, yeah, a 3.6 by 3.6 stables is not quite the size of a dressage arena, really.
Not
is
at
it?
all. And I mean, we were very lucky that I was able to put him into a quarantine facility. But Helen was with us in Doha riding as well, so her horse was in quarantine. Her top horse was in quarantine with us as well. So we were very lucky that they had. I don't know what you call them in English, but like an open box. So it was about 10 meters by 5 meters. So at least he could, you know, at least he could walk a bit. And I was
could move
every day for hours. You know, I was there every morning and every evening. And due to the what's the word, transmissibility, I guess, of herpes, you know, we have nearly 50 riding horses at Helen's Barn. So there was no way we could risk, if they were infected, getting it into the main barn. So I was completely isolated from the rest of the horses, you know, full on, you know, monkey suit, trying to keep them. I was there every day, walking with him up and down the box, you know, trotting with him with a carrot just to keep him moving, keep him exercising. You know, so that process was very up and down, you know. And then the following competition, it was our last show that we had. It was the last possibility. And I went in with the mindset of, you know what, it doesn't matter. Whatever happens will happen. We just have to do our best. And we ended up getting personal best scores and cracking 70% for the first time in international competition. And then, you know, here we are.
Oh, that's an amazing effort.
So it's, you know, it's very much, it's very up and down. And that was the whole process in the lead up to Tokyo. And even at the games, it was very much like that due to COVID.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it, that I find one of the biggest things that you need to be prepared to do, and you need to be super flexible, but you've just got to adapt, haven't you? Because when you go to these international shows, like, and then you throw in COVID as well, you don't have your normal team with you, you don't have your normal facilities. Like, I remember the eventers going to Tokyo, they had to travel the horses onto the island for cross country. Now, if you, for example, like, did up the zip of your tall boot and the zip split, like, there's not a tack shop there. Like, you just had to say, okay, what would happen in all of these situations and how can I best adapt to that? And is that what you found, Amelia? Like, it sounds like everything that's been thrown at you, you've just got to go, okay, this was my plan, and now I'm going to reinvent myself. I'm going to reinvent my horses program, and I'm going to take what I've got and I'm going to do the very best I can to keep going in the same direction.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. And it's funny you mentioned the zip on your top boot breaking, because
no
boots broke, but you know, we packed everything for Tokyo, and I was super pedantic about it. We had spares of everything. I mean, everything that we could possibly need. The one thing I did not take a spare of was a spare girth. And that's what broke the day of my first competition in Tokyo.
Oh, no. Did you have baling twine?
No. The good thing about my girth is that it's stitched, but then it has elastic, and then it has a sheepskin that's removable. So it's one of the Steuben ones. So actually where it snapped was not super important. You could still use the girth. But my groom, God love her, she did not tell me until after we came back to Germany. And as I was unpacking, I was like, what happened to my girth? Like, what moron broke my stuff in transit? And she was very sheepish. And I was like, Uncle, what are you not telling me? She said, yeah, it broke when we were in Tokyo the day before your first competition, but I didn't want to tell you.
Oh my God.
Oh, bless her. Some things are best not said, aren't they?
Exactly. So, I mean, it worked out really well, but you're absolutely right. These are things that you have to just sort of adapt and roll with. And it's a case of making the best of the situation you're there, and having confidence in your training, knowing that you've prepared to the best of your ability, and also accepting that at a competition, whether it be the Paralympics, whether it be the Olympics, or, you know, a local competition down the road, you just have to accept that you will not change anything about your training at the competition. It's about getting the best out of your horse on the day. And that's actually why when things don't go well in training, they're the best days, because you learn how to fix it without the added time pressure of having to perform. So, you know, if I can't get a pirouette at home, you take the time to figure out what works in your toolbox, that then you can get it at a competition. And that's actually what helped us a lot in Tokyo. So we changed the train. We really toyed around with how to warm him up the best, how to get the best out of him, because you know, by the time we got to the games, he'd been traveling for 3 weeks. We had something like 16 days quarantine in Aachen, and then he flew to Tokyo. And you know, in the end, he was training at the top level for a long time, and so you don't want to exhaust them. So you want to have quick, short training sessions.
And also, Amelia, because it was so hot over there, wasn't it? That it was so hot and humid that you couldn't work the horses for a normal length of time, could you?
Exactly. Yeah. So we were doing, you know, 10 to 15 minutes maximum because of the heat, because of the humidity, and he coped exceptionally well with it. And actually, when you were riding, you didn't notice. It was when you finished that suddenly you realized how wet you were. I mean, I've never sweated so much in my training as I did in the arena at Tokyo. I mean, I came out of my fast competition and I felt like my entire face was sliding off. There was that much all over me. You know, and then they take you to the media, and there's all these cameras lined up, you know, from all over the world, different stations. They want to interview, they want to ask questions, and all I can think of was, I'm on international TV and my face is melting off and I look like I just melting.
Don't worry, you and every other athlete. It was the same for everyone, because it was just insane. Yeah. What was the feeling? So how did it feel competing at the games to represent your country compared to all of the other high pressure competitions that you've done? What was the difference when you're competing for Australia at the games?
It was so surreal, actually. You know, it had been a goal for a long time. I remember going back to my first riding lessons. You know, I learned on a 14-2 Appaloosa, blind in one eye. I think he was like 27 years old at the time. And I was jumping 40 centimeters, and I was telling everyone I was going to the Olympic Games on this horse. Like, that was my goal. Yeah. Totally unrealistic. But I remember always having that drive. You know, I want to go. And it felt so surreal that after, you know, 23 years of having that dream, that you finally made it. I mean, even now, you know, a year and a half later, it's still so surreal to think that you made it. And sometimes I walk past, I have, you know, the plaque and the ribbons from our placings in Tokyo on my wall. And sometimes I walk past, I'm like, oh yeah, I went there. Like, oh, that, you know, I made that. You know? I opened my kitchen cupboard the other day, and I have a coffee cup there from Tokyo 2020. And it suddenly hits you like, oh yeah, you know, I went there. I did that. And so it's very surreal. But on the other hand, I was incredibly relaxed. I even surprised myself. I was way more relaxed at the games than I thought I was going to.
Really?
Even the morning of my first competition, you know, I was sitting in the stable chilling, and because of the heat, our competitions were super late into the evening. My first competition was 10:30 at night. And so you have this whole day, and that's something that either works in your favor or it doesn't. And so I kept myself distracted. I kept myself busy. I gave myself tasks to complete during the day to stay focused. Like, you know, things that my groom would normally take care of, I kicked her out, and I was like, I need to do this. I cleaned my bridle, I cleaned my boots, you know, I organized a tack room, just little things like that to try to keep myself busy, but not in an exhausting type of way. And I think that really paid off in the end. And even warming up for my competition, I had Helen, we did a video call, and she was warming me up in my ear, and just hearing her voice, like I hear 5 days a week, it instantly calmed me down, and it felt like a normal routine, you know, like I was just training at home. And my goal for the games was to go in there and not leave anything behind. You know, I wanted to come out and go, we gave everything we could have given. Even if we came last, even if we got 40%, I wanted to come out knowing that I'd given everything. And my goal was to qualify for the freestyle and to achieve an individual score of 70%. And we did that. And, you know, and I'm really happy with that. I always, you know, of course I wanted to come home with a medal, but you also have to accept where you are in training at that point. And it was a young horse at the time. He was only 9. And, you know,
you said he's a big horse as well, didn't you? I remember you saying he's quite a big horse. How big is he?
So he's 184 centimeters, which is around 18.3.
Jesus, that's
so
ridiculous. How does he fit in the arena? How many strides do you get in canter down alongside?
And now we can get quite a few. So we've actually started the Tempe changes. And when I first started flying changes on him, it was a disaster. And I thought, for sure, I don't know how people get 15 flying changes on a diagonal. Like, this will never happen. I needed the whole diagonal for 1. And now, you know, now I can get 7 one-time changes on him. Helen can get 15. I think it's a case of rider, not horse, but
it must take him a long time to grow into his body. I mean, because we all know these warblers, they take a long time until they stop growing, completely stop developing. It's something like the bones don't actually set until they're like 8 years old or something, all of their bones, 8 or 9. So yeah, he would have been a young horse and would have been undeveloped and wouldn't have been very strong. Can we talk a little bit more about him? I mean, how did you find him and why did you decide to get such a massive horse?
Yeah, why?
Full disclosure, that was not the plan. That was absolutely not the plan. So I found him in the Netherlands, and when I first came to Germany, I had a mare, and she was wonderful. She got me sort of, you know, into the routine and got me into the international scene. And at the end of 2018, she sold to England, and so I was looking for, you know, the next step. And I found him in the Netherlands in a you know, very random barn. And she the owner is a professional rider, but she had purchased him as a 3-year-old and kept him for herself, and then developed him really slow because of his size. So when I bought him at the age of 8, he had not done much, and he'd really only started his training, you know, sort of 18 months before. So as far as timeline goes, he was quite a bit behind, but it was due to his size. And he had a very nice character. I really liked him from the moment I saw him. But I saw him, I was standing at A and he was down at C at the other end of the arena. And for me, he looked like a normal horse. And, you know, then watched him train a bit and thought, yeah, I will have a sit on him. And he came closer and suddenly I went, oh, he's bigger than I realized. And then the rider got off. Yeah, exactly. And the rider got off, and being Dutch, she's quite tall, so she's around 6'1", 6'2". So she made him look normal size. I'm 5'6". And when I went to get on him, I realized, you know, I was on a mounting block, and I still needed like another good foot to be able to reach
another mounting block.
Yeah, this horse is massive. But as soon as I sat on him, I had a feeling like this could be my horse. And I had tried quite a few. I think I'd looked at around 150 videos in the previous 6 months. And, you know, as far as what I was looking for, he ticked the majority of the boxes. What he didn't tick was the size. He was clearly too big for me. And his training was not as far as it should be if we wanted to try for Tokyo. So the year of COVID actually really worked in our favor. It gave him time to develop his strength. Us to come together as a combination, and he really had to find himself. I mean, he's super long. He wears 7'6" size rugs, so he's not he's compact, but he's not so compact. And he had to find his legs. You know, if you controlled the front end, you lost the back end. If you were controlling the back end, the front end was doing what it wanted. And I say it's a bit like trying to steer a cruise ship inside Darling Harbour, because you've just got no control over where he goes. You know, it took a while, and also to pick this horse up. You know, we put him on the scales in Tokyo, and he's 752 kilos. So he's also not light. So to pick this horse up, you would get him on his butt and try to get him underneath himself to carry himself. You know, it took time. It took time, but he was super willing, and he's always in a good mood. He's super motivated every day, and he really tries to understand, and that's a huge bonus.
Did you find traveling him that the stalls and trucks are a little bit tight, particularly because you do so much travel and you're going for long journeys for long hours? How do you go with him in standard size bays?
So he doesn't fit in a standard size trailer. He needs sort of the warm blood size, but
Yeah.
the advantage you have over here is that he's actually not the biggest horse we have in the barn. He's the third biggest horse. So there are ones that are bigger than him. So that works, works in our favor. Because things are well established for bigger horses. So the box size at a competition, we get him a double box, so he has more space. But a lot of the competitions we go to are fixed stables. For example, in Denmark at Blue Horse, and they're 4x4 meters, so that's certainly sufficient for him. And as far as transport goes, he fits perfectly fine into most trucks, but trailer, he just needs extra height, extra length. That's sort of standard over here. So he's actually he's pretty okay.
Oh my God, he's just enormous. I can't believe that you fit him in a dressage arena. It's just a credit to you guys and your training.
I know.
Well, funny story. When I first started competing him, we went out at M level, which most M level tests are done in a 20x40.
Oh my God.
It would be okay. And one of the movements in the test was down the long side. You have to show some length and strides in canter.
Oh dear.
We left the arena and kept going.
I bet you did.
I mean, I'm surprised you can do a half 10-meter circle and get up the center line, because you would have done 3 strides of canter down the long side and then had to do some crazy donut to try and get up the center line. That's
exactly what it's like. I mean, the extended canter that he has is amazing. He got 9.5 for it in Tokyo. Like
wow.
It's really amazing. If you think of Glamourdale, but just less, uphill, because you're still getting the straight. That's the feeling.
Oh,
and
wow.
He is amazing with his extended canter, but the problem is you ask for it in the corner and you blink and suddenly you're at the other end of the arena. And as you said, especially in the para test, you have extended canter down the long side and then you come straight down the center line, and then the fast movement down the center line is you actually have to halt in our test. So extended canter, center line, halt, rein back, trot, and it's like, with him, it's so quick. It took a long time to get him together enough to be able to do that.
I can only imagine. That's crazy. Oh,
what a dude, and what an amazing attitude he must have. I mean, you certainly don't make it easy for yourself, do you, Amelia? I mean, you go out and you buy the biggest horses and you decide you want to move to Germany, and then you're a lawyer. I mean, you're literally setting yourselves all these extreme goals and achieving them. I mean, you're just such an inspiration. Can you let some of our listeners know that, because I know that this affects me particularly when I'm at competitions and things, you have all this outside noise and you have these little voices in your head like, am I good enough? Or what's going on over there? What's happening with that competitor? Do you have any little tools in your box that you use just to help keep you focused?
Yes, that's actually something I really struggled with in the beginning. So I was super conscious of what other people would think of my riding, especially coming from Australia and suddenly you're in a competition with people like Isabel Worth. She's on a horse 2 feet away from you. Even riding at Helen's in the beginning was rather intimidating for me, because you have this feeling like you don't really belong here. And that was, I think, the biggest roadblock to my competition, was I would think that people were standing on the sideline judging me for what I was doing. And, they may be doing that, but in the end, I just had to learn that it doesn't matter. You're there for you have your own goals. And what helped me was setting realistic goals and achieving them, to know that, okay, I was going in the right direction. And I also spent an entire summer going to a competition every weekend, making it so routine that it became completely normal in my normal, day-to-day schedule, that, every weekend we had a competition, that the nerves sort of fell away, because you just got so ingrained in the routine. And that's something that's happened a lot. So when I was riding in Australia, I had a young horse, and I bought her when she was 3.5. And I'd had her at that point for 2 years, and I was getting on her at home, totally normal training day. And as I was getting on, she absolutely lost her marbles. Still have no idea what happened, but she started bucking and ended up bucking me off onto concrete, and I fractured my back in several places.
Oh,
And
God, Amelia.
after that, so that was in 2014, so very shortly before I moved to Germany. And after that, I was incredibly nervous about the actual process of getting onto a horse. So that took a long time to get over as well. And that became very routine, getting onto them and learning that, okay, nothing is going to happen, nothing bad will eventuate from this. And it's the same with going to a competition, just going out, getting the routine, achieving small goals, and building your self-confidence that eventually the nerves fall away, and also channeling the nerves into something good. Not so nervous you can't function, but just also being a bit more aware of what you're doing. So finding that balance between totally nervous, not able to function, and totally relaxed that you're not actually riding. You have to find the middle ground. And that for me came from routine.
Yeah. So would you recommend, like, I know I have a couple of clients who are quite crippled by nerves, and they literally, like one in particular, will literally freeze and finds it difficult to move. So is there any sort of one thing that you'd think of that they could put in their mind just to say to themselves, like you said, it's going to be okay, and just take that next brave step to move towards the next step of your confidence, or the next step of the movement?
Yeah, for me in that situation, the best thing that helps me is keeping busy, not allowing yourself to concentrate on the nerves in that point. So as I did in Tokyo, cleaning my boots, cleaning my bridle, keeping myself entertained, doing something with my hands so that I'm not focusing on the nerves. That really helped me in that situation. And I think that also breaks you out of the freeze. And what helped me, rather than having the added pressure of a competition, is putting the horse on a trailer and going somewhere else to ride and making it like a competition. So platting the horse, putting your competition stuff on may seem a bit ridiculous, but putting the horse into the trailer, driving 10 minutes down the road and going to a different place, different arena, and then warming up like you would at a competition, and then going into the arena and riding the actual test in as much of a competition environment as you can make it, but without the added pressure of actually having to perform. And if it doesn't go well, you do it again the next weekend, and you keep doing it, and you keep taking the horse out, and you keep setting that routine. That's the case where you're so frozen with nerves. That's the point where you can walk through it and try to find what works for you, not at home, but also not at a competition.
So familiarity and repetition.
Progress.
Yeah, exactly.
Really interesting.
So do you have any advice for riders that are starting out that do actually want to go on and compete professionally?
Oh, I have lots of advice. It goes back to what I said before about finding something that works for you, and knowing that, I think you also have to start with the question of how much do you want it, because as I'm sure Amanda would tell you, it's not a straight road, and you have to be able to have the mindset to get through the good and the bad times. And if you want to do it professionally, knowing that it's not going to go well, you're going to have one day where it's not great. It might be 1 week, it might be a few months where it's constantly going up and down. Knowing that you have the ability to get through that. But I think that comes from not only you, it's 50% you as the rider, but it's also your team behind you, knowing that you have people that you can rely on, that you can put yourself in the best position possible to try to get the outcome that you want. And that's super important. And I think if you want to compete professionally over here, definitely come over for 2 to 3 months. Base yourself in a stable where you can stand back and watch, go to competitions, figure out how does it work, what do I need to do, because you don't want to be at a competition with your horse trying to work out what the routine is, because it's very different in Australia. So for example, the starter list for local competitions comes out an hour before the class, so you don't know what time you're on until an hour before. So for some people, that might be completely catastrophic, and they wouldn't be able to compete not knowing an hour before the competition what time they're on. So knowing that in advance, standing back at a competition without riding, without having a horse, and just watching how people do things, that's extremely beneficial. And getting to know how do you enter competitions? Who do you need to speak to? You know, doing all of those types of things is incredibly beneficial to starting your professional competition career over here, and finding someone who can support you through that and sit you down and say, this is how we do things here. This is why. And I think another thing that often stops people is you just have to accept, especially in Germany, that it is how it is. It doesn't make any sense from an Australian perspective. But you just do it. As soon as you accept that it is how it is, that's how the German system works, your life will be so much easier.
Oh my God. That it's so true, isn't it? You just have to get on with it at the end of the day, because if you start sweating the small stuff or sweating the things that you can't change, it's just a waste of energy, huh?
Exactly. Exactly. And if you can cope with that, international competitions will be a little bit easier for you.
Oh, so true. So true. So thinking of that, what are your plans for the future? So we're Paris next year. So what are you up to at the moment? And are you aiming for Paris?
Definitely, I think. I can't say no.
Awesome.
I mean, for me, of course, Paris is the goal. It would be amazing to be able to represent Australia again.
Are you qualified at this point?
No, because the qualification period started again in 2023. So January 1st, it started again.
Yep.
So essentially we have to requalify, and that involves attending, international competitions this year, next year. And at this point, just improving on our scores. And if we can demonstrate with each outing that we're getting better and better, then it puts us in a really good position. So this year,
which grade are you? Sorry, Amelia, you're grade 5?
Correct. Yeah, grade 5.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the highest level of competition, isn't it? What's the test level at the Paralympics in grade 5 that you're doing? What's that equivalent to?
It's equivalent to a PSG.
Oh, right. That's really high.
Yeah, so grade 5 is the category for riders with the least amount of disability, so the least amount of impairment. So the test level equivalent is sort of between an advanced test and a pre-St. George, but without the flying changes. So the 3s and 4s and the pirouettes are not included. So in place of flying changes, we have simple changes.
Okay.
And the freestyle level can be up to sort of pre-St. George. So the things that are not allowed in freestyle in grade 5 are full canter pirouettes, 1 10-piece, 2 10-piece, and piaffe and passage. Everything else you can include.
Oh my Lord. I actually didn't realize that the standard was that high. Are you competing, what level are you competing at in open class?
Open class small tour. So also PSG into 1. And training for the Grand Prix at the moment. So we use it as a training tool. Like, of course, I would love to compete Grand Prix one day, but it's not the end goal. But we found with him, he's suddenly surprised us all with a huge talent for piaffe, and it's really helped us get him. He will piaffe all day. It's amazing, and we use it to help him build the muscles and strength that he needs to hold himself together. So we use it as a training tool at this point. But it's also a bit of a challenge, let's see how far we can go. And so as far as Paris goes next year, this year is fairly easy for us because it's not a championship year for Australian competitors. So there's no World Championships, there's no Paralympics. And we obviously can't participate in the European Championships, which I'm rather disappointed about.
It's a bit boring, isn't it?
Yeah. And the Europeans this year are at 20 minutes from where I live, so that would be perfect.
Can you do the test ride or something like that just for some experience?
I asked them if they wouldn't mind running a separate international competition, but not part of the European. We'll see, but so this year's it's a bit relaxed for us. We're not going to hammer him too much on the competition side, just get him out enough to keep him current and keep improving the scores, but there's no pressure to compete every weekend.
And what I would love to finish to wrap this up with some just quick fire questions for you, Amelia. So I'm going to give you some questions into a few words and see what your answers are. So first question, would you rather stallion, gelding or mare?
Oh, that's super hard. I've always had mares and now I have a gelding. I think if you have a top mare, you can't go past a top mare.
Yeah, I agree. Is there one thing you think every horse owner should know?
how to take care of your horse's feet. We have a saying in the barn, no hoof, no horse. So I think I think everyone should have a lot of knowledge of that.
What is something you wish you knew before competing internationally?
Oh,
The list goes. Sure, there's a massive list.
Yeah, it's a huge list. I think learn to be flexible at international competitions. Use international competitions as a break from your daily routine. Have a holiday, sleep in a bit.
Yeah, love that. Love that. We've already touched on this next question a little bit, but do you have any rituals or superstitions before or during competitions?
I like to stay busy. I like to stay busy before a competition.
Yeah.
So I do my thing. My groom knows to leave me alone. She purposely does not clean my bridle or my boots so that I can do it. And actually, if my parents are around, it's my dad's tradition to clean my boots. And my mom feeds a small army, so she will prepare food for everyone. And she's normally shoving something down my throat before a competition. So that's kind of our routine.
I love it. What's your favorite non-horse related hobby?
Oh, I love to fly. I'm actually a qualified pilot, so away from away from horses, I really like to fly. That's my thing to do.
Actual planes. That's insane.
Yeah. So I know these supposed to be quick answers, but actually, when I was 15, I wanted to join the Air Force and become a fighter pilot. So I got my pilot's license when I was 15, and then I had a show jumping fall and ended up on life support with brain injury. And the Civil Aviation Authority went, "Yeah, we'll take your pilot's license. No more flying for you." And I mean, that was incredibly tough. And then so I ended up sort of shelving the idea of flying for a while and focusing on riding. And then, of course, I had my car accident, and so that changed everything. And then I moved to Germany, and so I recently got back into flying. I went home to Australia for the first time in 3 years, and while I was home, I went back flying again. And it was really, really good to get back up there. And that's my non-horsey hobby. So goal for that is to I can fly single engine aircraft at the moment, but my next goal is to fly twin engine aircraft. So that's the next thing for me.
Wow, Amelia, I thought you were going to say dog walking. I mean, seriously, no, flying plane. You've had so many hurdles put in your way, and you just keep overcoming them. It's so impressive. It's unbelievable.
I mean, I think we should also point out that there are a lot of times where I lie there and think, I give up now. I can't keep doing this. It's very much up and down, and in the end, it comes down to making a conscious choice to keep going or not. And there have been a lot of times where I think I can't keep doing this. But you keep going, and it doesn't happen as quickly as I would like. I'm super impatient, but you get there, and you keep going. Yeah. I think the biggest question I always ask myself is why not?
What's the worst piece of advice you've ever been given?
That you have to stick with it no matter what. I think that's the worst piece of advice you can tell someone. I've been in a situation before where something is clearly not working, and I knew it in my gut that it wasn't going to work. And yet, we ingrain in people that if you want to get somewhere, you just have to go at it no matter what. And I think that can be applied to, if you have the wrong horse. You might have every good intention with that horse. You might love your horse, and there's so many things with horses. You spent a lot of money to get there. You've invested a lot into the horse. You've invested in your training. And at the end of the day, if it's not working, it's not working. And I think that's a super important thing to realize, that it's okay to let it go. It's okay to say it's not working for me. And I had a really super nice off the track thoroughbred when back in the eventing days, and I tried for a year with this horse, and we hated each other, and it wasn't working, and I had this ingrained need to keep going because my parents had put so much money into the horse. I really wanted to ride. I really wanted to make it work. And if I could go back to that point, I probably would never have bought him, actually. But even in the case where I had bought him, I would tell myself it's okay to let him go. It's okay to know it's not working. So worst piece of advice is you tell someone you have to keep going no matter what. That's not helpful. It's okay to let go, and it's okay to take a sideways step or a backward step to move forward. And that's super important to remember.
There's that fine line between grit, when people say there's grit, you've got to keep going, you've got to keep going, to actually, no, it's okay to let go.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
And it's not about giving up. It's not about quitting. It's about finding a way that works for you. And it's super okay to say, this is not working for me right now. I mean, I did that with my mare. We got to a point in our training where I loved her, and financially, if I could have afforded it, I would have kept her because she was super fun. She's super easy, but I had to let her go to move forward. And I think that's so important to realize that you don't have to stick with it if you don't love it. At the end of the day, it should be fun. And if you hate it, then that's a big red flag.
Yeah, red flags. Look out for them. So I'm going to just add another question here. So what's the best bit of advice you've ever been given?
That you can only do your best. I know it's such a cliche, but it's something I look at every day in training. And, you are where you are in your training. It's perfectly okay to compare yourself to people like Lottie Fry or to Helen or to Isabel Webb. Use them as inspiration to get where you want to go, but don't compare them to yourself. You are where you are, you're on your path, and set small realistic goals. But at the end of the day, why not? Paris is there, why not try for it? If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but you gave it a try, and that's the most important thing.
So my final question, what's your definition of success?
When you're happy with what you've done.
I think that's great.
Yeah, exactly. I think it comes down to, are you happy with what you did? Don't compare your success to everyone else's.
Amelia, you have been such an inspiration to chat to today. I've enjoyed every moment. And the last bit was just thrown in there with you being a pilot as well. So I know we're going to be inspiring so many of our listeners out there. I know you've inspired me. And on those days when it does feel really dark and it does feel really hard, you just got to keep pushing on through. And you will get there. You will manage to achieve your dreams. So thanks so much for coming on our podcast today.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
This has been the Equestrian Experience with myself, Bex Mason, my co-host Amanda Ross, and this episode's guest, Amelia White. To send in your questions for our up-and-coming episodes, enter our competitions, and access our other episodes, be sure to visit the equestrianexperiencepodcast.com. You can also follow us at Bex Mason SJ and at Amanda Ross Equestrian, and find Amelia on Instagram at amelia.a.white. Until next time, have a great equestrian experience.